All right. Well, I'm very happy to be here with Gideon Kantor. Gideon is a Ritchie boy, and so he has been all over the place in the last few years. He was at the Holocaust Memorial Museum's recognition of the Ritchie boys, and he was at Fort Ritchie for the Congressional Gold Medal announcement. And I'm happy to have him with us today. So, how are you?
Very good, thank you. And yourself?
Oh, I'm doing very well. So I have a series of questions here. I'm hoping that you'll be able to tell us a little bit about your experiences, and I think it'll be a great learning tool for everybody. So I'd like to start off with this. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences growing up in Europe?
Okay, well, I first talk about Austria. Uh, I was born in Vienna, Austria, and I spent my time in Austria before Hitler, and also quite a few months after Hitler. Before Hitler, things were generally very peaceful. Uh, I did a lot of things. I went to school there, of course, and and my and before I do that, I would just want to tell you that my father was a prominent lawyer in Vienna. Actually, he was the president of the Bar Association, and he also was a a vice president of an international law association. And my mother was very busy at home, taking care of us. And both of them were born in Czechoslovakia. Uh, my father was born in a small town called Vučovice, and my mother was born in Brno, which is the capital of Moravia. And of course, this was the time when there was the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So it's not unusual that people uh, outside of Austria uh, lived in Vienna. And as I mentioned to you, I was born in Vienna, and so was my sister. And uh, and so let's first talk about before Hitler came. Uh, we regularly visited the parents of my mother and my sister and I, and we always looked forward to it because they were such nice grandparents. They really loved children, and so we had a wonderful time in Brno. Uh, I remember one funny story, which was that I wanted to take a bath in my grandmother's bathroom, and she said, "You can't take a bath now because there's a fish in the bathtub." Well, it turned out that in those days, when people bought fish, they bought them alive, and they were the ones that killed them when they were ready to prepare them for eating.
Hmm.
And so I still remember this. I was very upset. I felt that the fish should not have priority over me. And this, this story has stuck with me, as you can see. Now, my grandfather liked to play chess. So he played chess with me, and in the beginning he always let me win, but I always lost. And that's kind of interesting because nowadays, when you do that, you probably might have a tendency to have the children win. But at his time, the outlook on that was different.
Hmm.
So as I said, I enjoyed my stay with my grandmother and grandfather very much, and of course, you know what fate had. Uh, uh, I guess I guess that's about it about our visits to my grandparents. Before Hitler, I uh, I did a lot of things as a child, besides, of course, going to school. I uh, I went on ski trips with the school, and and I ice skated out below our house. There was a tennis court, and every winter it became an ice skating court and an ice skating ring. And so we were going there. As I said, we also skied quite a bit, and played a little bit of soccer, and and during the summer, uh, my sister and I and my parents, we went to the aquatic, what's it called, the Adriatic Sea, and I always remember I had a teacher who taught me how to swim, and not as sophisticated as now, but it worked equally well. He put a towel around my waist and had me stretch out in the water horizontally, and then he let me move my arms and my feet, and he would test here and there whether I still needed the waist supported, and when he found out that I didn't that I didn't that I didn't need the waist to be supported by a towel, I graduated to a swimmer, and otherwise in Vienna, as long as I just remember when with my parents, they had the Vienna Symphony Orchestra played it on Sunday around lunchtime, and they always took us along. And I, particularly my sister, liked it very much, and so did I. Although I remember that at one point I was told to be quiet, and we took piano lessons for my cousin, the son of my mother's sister, and he came once a week, and he taught both piano uh, to me, and also he taught piano to me and also to my sister. And one thing I also remember about him is that he said, if you do well on the piano with me, at the end of your lesson, I'll tell you a joke. And I still remember that. And unfortunately, well, actually, fortunately, in his case, he ended up in Shanghai, and then he came to Canada, and he died a natural death. Also, once a week, we went to the because as kids, we went to the afternoon synagogue services for children, and so you can see we were quite busy, and also school kept us busy, and so when Hitler came, since my father was a prominent Jewish lawyer, he was arrested, and he was in prison until I think about the same summer, sometimes like end of July or beginning of August. And there were many things that were unfortunate, of course. One of them was that I had my bar mitzvah without my father. it was my uncle who took his place. And so that was in a sense a sad occasion. And also, but it turned out that they immediately took us out of school to segregate us. They say I was reading somewhere else that Hitler had a good knowledge of Jim Crow-ism, and he carried out some of their policies, and so we were segregated, and I still remember an instance, and of course, at that time I was 13 years old. We still remember an instance where I was still in the old school, and then they asked all the Jewish children to leave their classroom, and I forgot to take my coat, so I told it to the teacher, and he went in and took my coat and gave it to me. And I was puzzled why didn't he let me? I still remember I planned to go in there myself and get my coat, and I still wonder why he did that, and I'll never find out. But at one time I had some theories, but I think it's better not to theorize about this. And otherwise, we of course missed our father, and my mother was able to take care of us very well. Now the question is, the question is whether you want me to talk also about my 2.5 years stay in France.
Yes, if you'd like to.
Okay. Well, first of all, we went to Czechoslovakia first to visit when we left Vienna, to visit our grandparents. And I still seem to vaguely remember my father urged them to leave, but they said it was strange, and they were not at all attuned to this type of suggestion. And then we flew to Switzerland, and then went to my first year in France was in Grenoble, and that reminds me. I had a French teacher in Vienna, and she so I did know some French, which of course helped me a lot, and I was very much impressed by the critical the critical thinking that that took place in the French school, and also the amount of knowledge that they put out. I thought it was a very good year. And then the next year, so this was 38. Now the next year, in 39, we went to Bordeaux. Grenoble is in the French mountains, and it's a beautiful place. And I understand now it's also a big city. And then we went to Bordeaux, and I went to the Lycée there. And this summer, before we took up an apartment, we spent at the Atlantic Ocean. So it was also a good time, and I again enjoyed the French schools. But then looming in the background was Hitler's war against France. And as a result of that, we as a result of that, we actually fled Bordeaux, because Hitler, there was the occupied and non-occupied zone, and Bordeaux was in the occupied zone. So we fled from Bordeaux to Marseille, and it was quite an experience. I still remember one thing. My father he wanted to make sure we take that bus. So he handed my sister through a bus window into the bus. And I thought that this was kind of risky because we might be separated from her, but he knew what he was doing. Because she was in the bus, we were able to get on the bus. And so afterwards, we stayed in some small town in southern France and finally went to Marseille. Well, as time went on, uh, it became quite clear that Hitler was out to kill the Jews. So my father did everything that he could for us to leave France. And before I mentioned that we leave France, it was interesting at the time that my father, although we could have gone to the United States immediately, he would have had to only apply for a visa at the American embassy in Marseille. But one reason he got his visa is because he had some money saved in the United States, and he was afraid that one of the American officials would leak this information to the Nazis, and thereby he would not only get into physical trouble, but also his money would be taken. So for that reason, he decided that we should go to Cuba first and get there the American visa. The trip to Cuba was quite eventful. We went to Spain and Portugal. It was quite eventful because because the French said, okay, my sister, I and my mother can leave. But they said my father, because he's less than 60, could not leave. So he was able to get a legal visa that he bought. And as a result of that, he decided that the French authorities would be suspicious if they saw us with one visa and he would have another visa. So he went by the way of Perpignan, which is along the Mediterranean, and we took the train across the middle of the Pyrenees, and I still remember that my mother looked out the window one time before we got to the frontier out of the train, and she saw that this discharged our luggage. It turned out they had made a mistake in putting the tax on the luggage. So my mother, who had a good sense of what to do, offered so the French said they couldn't do anything. So then my mother offered them some food stamps, because we, of course, didn't need the food stamps anymore since we were leaving France. And the French changed their mind, and we were with our luggage. Now, what my father had planned, that he would go to Zaragoza, which is a city northern Spain, and we would go to Zaragoza and meet there. But it turned out that we found out when we got at the Spanish border into Spain that only the train that we took in the morning would take luggage. That the other train that my father picked out was kind of a fast and short train, and they wouldn't take big luggage. So we had to decide, and not we. I didn't. I was young, 13. But my mother decided that my sister should go by herself to Zaragoza to meet my father. I remember at those times, at those times you couldn't communicate by telephone, and so she went by herself, and she always told the story how all the Spanish people looked at her. She was a girl of 15 years old. She was 2 years older than me, traveling all by herself in a Spanish railroad. But anyway, she got to Zaragoza and met my father, and then we met them with the other train. And you have always to remember that you always have to remember that this was really kind of a miracle, because without any personal contacts we were able to find each other. And of course this goes back to the stories in war, where the only people that you talk to after the war, those who are alive, not those who were killed. So we were one of the fortunate few who were alive. And when we were in Spain, my father thought, no, finally we can move together, the whole family. So we went to the Spanish authorities in Madrid and asked for, oh yeah, and because we crossed the Spanish frontier different spots, the entrance visa into Portugal was different. And so that was so that when we went into France, we we uh, we had a different, as I said before, different entrances to Portugal. He went to the Spanish authorities to change the entrance border town for us, and they said, "Oh, of course, no problem at all. Just see the German authority, German consulate, and they'll do it for you." Of course, we didn't, and we ended up in Portugal. All the whole family together. As a matter of fact, the funny thing I remember now was that we crossed the Spanish frontier at one point, and my father at another point, and there's the river Ebro, which is a Spanish river, and there was an inundation. So they decided, so they closed the border, and anyway, we ended up crossing the Spanish-Portuguese border at the same place as my father, but we only met in Lisbon together. And then we went to Cuba, and my father sent me for about maybe less than, we were there maybe less than 2 months, and during the time he sent me to an American school so that I would improve my English. And and then we had to leave. We were able to leave Cuba to come to the United States. The curious thing was that in order to get into Cuba, you had to make a $500 deposit for each person, which is $2,000. Of course, my father wanted the money back. Yes, they gave him the money back, but they gave him $500 notes. And when he went to the American teller in New York, we went to New York and said and wanted to change the money. The teller said, "You better be careful. This is black market money, and if you try to change it now, you might get into trouble." So we only changed it, of course, after the war. So we got to New York, and should I continue there?
Yeah, I wanted to ask what your life was like when you were, now in the United States. What kinds of things did you do before you went into the war yourself?
Before, oh, okay. Well, when I got there, I went to. Do you know New York City?
A little bit.
Well, I went. My father was very capable in taking care of his children, so I went to what's called Stuyvesant High School, which is a quite a well-known high school, and I was able to take some courses. I got in April. I got credit for, of course, my language courses, and I also wanted, and of course, I had my French certificate of what I took and what grades I got. And I also wanted to take what is called the regional examinations in New York City. And that was kind of interesting. That prejudice is kind of international because my math teacher was at least that was my opinion, was prejudice. My math teacher was a New York of Jewish background, and he didn't want me to take the examination. And my feeling was that he felt that these Jewish refugees from Europe come here and they want to take over, something like that. That was my feeling. And I went to the principal, and he let me take the examination, and I got a 95. So without initiative, I would have never been able to get all the credits. I went to summer school in New York, and then I graduated in in I graduated what is 38, 39. I guess I graduated in 40, and then I went to Newark University, and I had a year of college down in New York City, and I could have continued because at that time students that went to college could get a deferment. But of course, this was my war, and I didn't take advantage of that. And I was drafted and went to Fort Ritchie, North Carolina, and then I took the Ritchie course, which I passed. So, is there anything else you want me to tell about that?
What was it like when you were informed that you were being sent to Camp Ritchie? What was that like? Or did you sign up for the Ritchie courses?
No, I was very happy. I remember that was the case, and and I certainly appreciated it.
What do you remember about some of the coursework that you did at Camp Ritchie?
I only remember I had one question: how are the strategies of the French and English army different from ours? And I think the answer was, if I remember correctly, it depends on the situation. The instructor didn't feel that was that was a worthwhile question to go into details.
Do
That's
you
about all I remember.
do you remember anything about the Commandant Charles Banfield?
No, no, I don't. But another thing I remember is that we had an evening exercise, and one of our boys drowned. And what I found curious at the time, I guess it would understand it now, was we were told not to tell anybody that he died. And so, of course, I didn't, but it kind of puzzled me to have these type of instructions. But I don't remember, I don't understand it. How come I don't remember anything else?
Hmm. Were there any interesting people in your class while you were at
Oh,
Ritchie?
yeah, as a matter of fact, one of them was the son of a opera singer, Melchior, who was in our class. And that was kind of unusual to see the son of such a famous man in our class. And now the other thing was we had also a Frenchman in my class, and because of my French, I took the French version. I thought that I would have, I mean, just in case I needed it. And there was a man in our class who was trained to be dropped in France and join the underground. And we still remember, I really felt he had so much courage to do that. So those were about the two people that I remember best.
Do you recall if you all have ever discussed how many folks in your class were refugees? Would you think that there was a even breakdown of people who had left Europe, or was there a lot of different folks from a lot of different places.
No, I had the feeling it was very much focused on Europe. That was my impression from the people I met. But there were a few that were not, but there were not very many.
Did
That were not refugees.
Did you ever get sent out in the middle of the night on a course with a compass and a map and have to find your way back to the camp?
No, I don't remember. Maybe I did, but I don't remember at all. Maybe that was the time when there was maybe that was the time when there was the flood, and so we never made it. That could very well be that was the night that
Okay.
we were supposed to essentially find our way back.
Yeah. When you were sent to Europe, did they attach any other Ritchie boys to your unit? Was it, or were you
Well, I don't know, there was Drew Pearson wrote in the paper, he was a journalist, that the soldiers at Camp Ritchie had it very easy. So the general in charge got very nervous, I guess. That's my interpretation. And so he organized what was called a cattle alert, where they send us over to Europe without assigning us. And so that's what I remember.
Okay. Did you ever hear anyone while you were overseas talk about the Ritchie interrogators, or was it mentioned but the Ritchie boys or Ritchieites or Ritchie wonders? Was that something that you ever heard when you were overseas and back in Europe?
I don't, maybe, but I don't remember.
Okay. Now, did you ever interrogate any prisoners of war?
No, I was actually with the 4th Armored Division, so I had a few experience when I talked to some Germans, but I was actually I was not assigned to a particular Ritchie group.
Okay.
And the two things I remember is that one was when the war ended. I met some German officer, and I talked to him, and he said, "And remember that we are covered by the Geneva Convention." I mean, that's really some nerve. And then the other thing that I remember was when we went I landed 1 month after D-Day, and we went all the way across France, through Germany to Czechoslovakia. And what amazed me is when I talked to we had 2 officers on each hood on our vehicle. And what amazed me was that the officers, and we went through some pretty tough terrain, and the officers said, "Stop." They were not aware of the fact that our vehicles had forward drive, and that kind of amazed me that they didn't know that. And I had quite an experience in France. We advanced through the Avranches Gap. Well, before we got through the Avranches Gap, we were cut off, and so I took advantage of my French, and I found out how we can rejoin our forces. And I was quite impressed. Actually, rather recently, that came on my mind. I was rather impressed by the fact that they certainly didn't they certainly gave us the right information. In other words, they were not sympathizers with the Nazis. So we were able to go back to our line.
Well, my next question is, were you involved with liberating any of the camps in Europe?
Well, I visited Ohrdruf, but maybe we didn't liberate them. But some parts of the 4th Armored Division did, but our part we didn't. But I saw the concentration camp, and some of these things are still as clear in my mind as it happened today, and as we noticed other things I don't remember. But I guess that really stayed with me, and to see these emaciated bodies, some just all over the place, and then some were stacked very neatly were stacked very neatly, and I was really frightened by the methodology of doing the right thing when somebody's dead that the Germans did. But we did not, our part did not liberate Orduf, but we certainly visited Orduf very, maybe a day later, if not the same day.
Is there a particular mission that you went on that sticks out in your mind?
That what?
Is there a particular mission that you did or completed that sticks out in your mind?
What is that?
Was there a particular mission or anything you worked on that stands out in your mind?
Well, I thought what really stuck out of my mind, because we were so lost, was in France when we were cut off, and I was the guy who was able to help, where I had, in a sense, I had direct command, and to which way to go. I thought this was that was quite some experience for me. So I would remember that. What else? Oh yeah, I remember one thing in Czechoslovakia. We captured some German arms, and we had a German prisoner with us, and somebody said, "Can you show us how this particular arm works?" And I said, "Are you crazy? He might all kill us." And that still sticks in my mind, how without checking whether the gun was loaded or not, this naive guy asked a question like that. That still sticks in my mind as an experience that stays with me. Anything else that? Well, one thing stood out in my mind. We went to Eastern Germany, close to Leipzig, and suddenly we got orders to make a U-turn. And at that time, I couldn't understand that, but that was part of the Yalta Agreement, and we had got into territory that was supposed to be occupied by the Russians. But I mean, I also remember when we were very close to Bastogne, and I was driving a truck, and when some of the people came back from Bastogne, some of the Americans, how terribly pale they were. I mean, those who stayed alive. And that still sticks in my mind. By the way, I got 5 battle stars because I was in 5 battles, and I was also able to get the Legion of Honor, Légion d'honneur, the French Legion of Honor, because I was in the fighting zone. I was in the battle zone.
What was that? Was that your proudest moment, or what was your proudest moment during your experience serving the United States during the war? Is there a particular moment or event that you feel most proud of for your efforts?
Well, as I mentioned before, the fact that I was able to get these Americans back to their unit, I thought was something that I was very proud of.
Hmm.
It was on the Cotton Town Peninsula, where Utah Beach was. You know, if you think of the Cotton Town Peninsula like a finger, you know, it has the configuration of somewhat of a finger, and then after you leave the Avanche Gap, it becomes part of the continent, the full continent.
So when you came home after the war, where did you go on to live, and what did you go on to do?
Well, I finished. I was able to finish my undergraduate degree at New York University in engineering. Then I got a master's degree in engineering at Brooklyn Polytechnic Institute, and then a PhD at Cornell University. And there I had quite experience. My advisor was one of the authorities in the field of radio wave propagation. And he told me that he learned something from my work, and I was very proud of that. And then I just worked first for the first at in Boston at the Air Force Cambridge Research Laboratory and related type of activities with other companies. But then I came to Washington, and I was a research physicist at the Food and Drug Administration. And there I had a lot of good experiences in terms of doing what I could in trying to help a research lab to do the thing that would help. But in this particular case, cancer patients.
Well, it seems like
And,
you're very proud of the work that you did assisting those folks as well.
who was it?
He's saying it sounds like you're very proud of the work you've done assisting, the FDA and the cancer folks as well.
What's the question?
You're proud of, the work.
Yeah,
you
I'm
did
very,
there.
very proud of that. As a matter of fact, I'm even prouder they gave me the highest recognition of it. It's a merit medal. And my wife, who was French, by the way, it was handed over to her because I was busy on a contract that was sponsored by the National Institute of Health to see to it that the research was done properly at various hospitals throughout the United States. And I think at that time I was scheduled to go to Arizona.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to share for anyone watching in our interview?
Well, one thing I'd like to share, it's really amazing. I really was very happily amazed about that. Is that they did take the refugees and train them, and were willing to train them for intelligence, because because actually, and as a matter of fact, no such a thing as any leakage was the case. In the contrary, this was a tight unit, and I was really impressed that somebody had this foresight. People are usually more worried about security than they are about also not only security, but security combined with efficiency and know-how.
Why do you think there was not any kind of leakage of any information or any intelligence on the from the Ritchie boys and those who were in intel?
Well, because they knew about the Holocaust, and I mean you have, but also I mean, the Germans did so many terrible things to the Jews that you couldn't end saying what motivated most. And as I say again, the man or woman who suggested to make these people Ritchie boys, to my mind, must have had a very very good perspective, and it still amazes me now. I mean, when you hear all these stories about leakage and so forth, that it amazes me even now that this took place.
Well, I appreciate your time for the interview today, and
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone will enjoy the video, and hopefully they'll learn a thing or two about your wartime experiences.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.